Hi, world historians. This is day 3. This is part 3D. And remember that at some time, if I'm skipping ahead too fast, just go back or pause it, get your notes, and keep going. I'm going to kind of gallop through the general aspects of Mesopotamia as we finish up today on day 3. This is our last day 3 lecture. So the sixth note to write down is that the government would collect taxes for building and irrigation projects. So that's something that we see in common of many governments that occur afterwards, including our own government. Point number 7 is that wall building and armies were used to try to hold off potential invaders. And this crossroads of the world was an area that was especially prone to being invaded because other groups would want to secure their trade routes. And so they would see the advantage of trying to take and claim this spot for themselves. We already talked about ziggurats, so that was one of their main building structures. Mesopotamian society. Note number 1 is that the cities allowed for things that cities and urban living do, more variety of what kinds of jobs you could do, and this was made possible by the agricultural revolution. We're going to see this happen again in Europe in not until around the 1700s AD in Europe, and the cities could develop wealth and trade with other places and enjoy those goods as well. Social classes tragically developed, depending on how we think about social classes, some people considering them to be inevitable. But in Mesopotamia, certainly there were people at the bottom of the social stratosphere that were treated basically like slaves. And now we're going to kind of go through that social strata order. Kings were at the top and nobles. Also at the top were religious leaders who ruled the ziggurats and received large incomes. It was a theocracy, so the politics and what the leaders told the people that the idols wanted was intertwined. After the religious leaders were the free commoners, also called peasants. They didn't have property, they had crippling taxes, and they had to build those ziggurats. And then after the peasants were slaves, prisoners of war, criminals, people in prison because of perhaps their parents' debt. And it was a patriarchal society, which meant that men were the head of the household. We're going to see writing develop in a great way in Mesopotamia. And they would use, as you can see from here, kind of a triangle-shaped stylus to press in their markings, this wedge-shaped writing here called cuneiform. The Mesopotamian writing style, number 1. Cuneiform, here's another note about it. Now, it was largely a pictographic as opposed to a phonetic system. So these were pictures that represented their ideas. Symbols represented their sounds, their ideas, rather than letters. Wedge-shaped, triangle-shaped stylus to press into the clay. Oops, keep going. They would use clay tablets when the clay was still malleable and then let it dry, and then you'd had your message. And if you wanted to soften it again, you could do a new message. So basically, this is a transition as you see through. So first, if you're trying to say head, you might just draw what it looks like. But then gradually, you're going to switch to phonetic sounds. And the stylus, as I was talking about, it had that wedge or triangle shape at the top, and you'd press it into the clay and then bake it, and then you had your message. Mostly what they would bother writing things down for was commercial or tax documents. And here I am at a museum looking at Mesopotamian clay tokens that they would use for trade. So this was like their money in the Mesopotamian region in the BC. There you have those clay tokens. That was their system of money, basically. The fourth note to write down, if it comes, I don't click too many times. Education was limited to scribes. Sorry, we'll go back to that. Education is limited to scribes and religious officials. Not everyone got to be literate to learn how to write and to read. So you can get that note down, number 4. Education